All right, so since a picture says more than 1,000 words, we thought we'll put together a little trailer that we're going to show you now in the beginning. All right, so as you can guess by now, we're from a company called MegaZebra. So what else do we do at MegaZebra apart from printing that name onto our shirts? Let me just quickly tell you about it. So we've actually been in the social mobile space for a long time. So one of our the things that we do are, so say we call it the Trails franchise. It's very much like the King games. Yeah, so you have games where you can progress. There we have a solitaire, as you can see, a mahjong, and they've been very successful for a lot of years. But we thought there's got to be something else out there that we want to take a look at, and actually it's something that I've been hearing here at the conference as well, a little now and then. It's where TV and film content meets games, and that's why we started Suburbia a while ago. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the things that we learned in that process when merging TV, film and games content. So, we're not the first ones who have ever done that or thought that this is a great idea to bring games and film together. So, what we've done here is we've collected a couple of examples where TV and film has been tried to migrate to games. Yeah, so Saw, as you can see, was a great franchise in the film business. Didn't really work for the game sucked. Fight Club, again, great game. Yeah, game didn't play. Desperate Housewives, also there, this one actually sucked so badly, so at some point they put a sticker onto the box to say, well, this might actually not work on your computer. So this, in the past, hasn't worked out. Let's look at it the other way, where games have inspired movies. And again here, Mario Bros, great game. Apparently people thought that the film sucked. Likewise, Alone in the Dark, that didn't really work either. So, interesting. Then there's something, it's been mentioned here a couple of times. This seems to have worked okay, it's at least been prolonged for a season, where you have, so to say, a meta screen concept with game and episodes at the same time. And last but not least, so to say, the idea of bringing story into a game has also been around for a while, but traditionally they looked a little bit like this, which is odd. So it seems like this has been a topic that people have been interested in the past, but they haven't really done it right, or something wasn't there yet. So we put a lot of money into expensive surveys, and we talked to a lot of experts to find out what are the reasons. And the main ones were these. Movie people look like this. Game people look like this. Movie people, they pop bottles. Gaming people pop cans. So this is kind of like the two sides of the industry that we have. But this doesn't have to stay like this. So this is why we thought we'll do Suburbia, and Mark will tell you a little bit about what we have learned so far and what the future might look like for this game.
Sure. All right. So over the past few years, a bunch of things have changed. For one, the classic TV demographic has become gamers. Yeah, this wasn't the case 5 or 10 years ago. The other thing is that there's mass market reach, true mass market reach, just like primetime television. You know, social games started to be just like that, with the same kind of reach. The third thing is snack gaming. Yeah, so you just game a little bit. It's not this hour-long gaming experiences that you do anymore. It's like snack gaming. People mentioned this before here in the room as well. And then the last thing that happened for companies like us, we push new software every week. You know, it's like new features, bug fixes that's being pushed out every week. Now, one thing stayed the same when you talk with people, like everybody loves a good story. That still holds true. Yeah, and the other thing is like nobody is moved by ones and zeros. Yeah, that's just not enough. Now. What we did that when we started to work with on Suburbia is like we took the 4 trends that I just mentioned before and wanted to build a game for a broader TV demographic. Yeah, because that's now an audience that play games. Yeah, we have the distribution to reach those people. You know. Say again? Okay. All right. So is that better? Yeah. All right. So I was on the second point there, where we talk about distribution. You know, where we can reach the TV demographic with Facebook and with mobile. You know, pretty accessible. Now we did create. We started to create snack storylines. Yeah, much like what has happened on television, as opposed to long form film. Yeah. And we push out new content, what we call episodes, every week. Yeah. So that also starts to feel very much like a TV series. So when we position the game, we like to think about it like the house of cards for the games industry. Yeah. So we have a couple of characters that go through juicy situations, and those characters just come up again and again and again. Yeah. There are several plot strands at once. So not just one plot strand, like in a classic film. No, really several plot strands, like you have in a TV series like House of Cards. No, we try to build interesting characters that resonate with people. And then there's the same in snack watching or snack gaming. Yeah, you can watch as little or as much as you want. You know, right now we have 6 episodes out. You can play them in 1 week. You know, but you can also take your time and play them in a couple of months. Yeah, and it's produced by a new entrant. So that's us, basically. Now, as Greg says, I do have an MBA, so I could tell you this, like we did all of this analysis, we saw all these trends coming together, but this really wasn't so. Yeah, the first, what we first wanted to do is to build The Sims on a social platform. Yeah. So 2 or 3 years ago, this seemed like a good idea until this has happened. So EA and Zynga brought out Sims Social and the Will, right? So that kind of sucked for us because our game wasn't even out yet at the time. But then one of the things that we started, that we thought from the very beginning is we wanted to do something with The Sims, but make it more interesting and have story in it. Yeah, so this is the angle that we then started to emphasize, but that ended up to be very point and clicky. Much like many text adventures or adventure games who have a strong storyline, it was just too point and clicky. So then what we did is we integrated more game mechanics, which looks like this. Yeah, so game loops, all of these good things. We incorporate resources and stuff like that, and that started to work out better. Yeah. So here's a bunch of metrics. We're pretty analytics driven as well in the company. So what you see here is user retention. The left is like January 2014 and the right is June. So that's pretty recent. So day 1 retention, for example, went up from 24%. So 24% of the players that signed up the day before would come back the next day. And that number is now like 36%. Which is pretty good. And that basically goes for day 3, day 7, up until day 30. So basically those numbers almost doubled then in the meantime. Now I want to talk about how kind of what is the thinking behind what we think drove all of that. Now what we try to do is to merge TV series thinking with games thinking and really bring it together in a good way. And the start for all of this is the setting. Yeah, so that's the place where the players play. That's called Libertine Heights. We try to, frankly, we told our artists make it look like Desperate Housewives. Yeah, and then the cool thing that has happened when we play tested with people, they actually recognize it. Yeah, so it's a cozy environment and everything looks perfect. But of course, this is not so because there's like story to it as well. And then that's the second point. When we construct the whole thing, we think in seasons and episodes, like TV people. Yeah. So we have a plan for season 1 and for season 2. Kind of we say that's the overarching story. And then within each season, we have 12 episodes, each with a hook, yeah, to make it interesting in the very beginning, and then a cliffhanger, like to keep people compelled to kind of want more story as they move along. And then also at the end of season 1, and season 1 is about the mystery of the rock star, Kurt Morrison, in the game. We have a strong cliffhanger as well, yeah, that they keep moving. It takes me to the next point. Also very much like a TV series, we don't have this one single plot. Yeah, we have several plot lines, and they start, you know, like plotline A, for example, starts at the beginning, plotline B as well, and they keep going for a few episodes, then they stop, another one comes in, a new one, you know, mostly around characters, of course, that keeps going until the other one picks up again, yeah? Yeah, and that keeps going, you know, throughout the game, really. And throughout these plot strands, people find out backstory, yeah? So when we planned out the first couple of seasons, we thought about, okay, what is the backstory for all of this to make the thing look bigger than it really is, yeah? And then the player kind of backs into the backstory. They find out more about, you know, who's the rock star? Why is he missing? Who were the people he associated with? Kind of, you know, what happened to him, and why is she always, like, all of a sudden important, one of the characters, and so. And that is driven by NPCs, so non-player characters. They kind of help drive the story forward, which takes me to the next one. Yeah, we took great care to construct interesting NPCs, yeah? And created, you know, people call them archetypes. Yeah, so for example, on the top left here is Maria Cristina. That's like your American or Italian-American housewife. Yeah, but she's, as you find out, she's not only just a housewife. No, she has these things going on that nobody knows about. Natalie's the perfect housewife, you know, but you know she has her problems too. You know, mostly resolved around an unhappy marriage that you find out, with a husband that's kind of an asshole, yeah. So what she needs to do, for example, is to start a new life, yeah. And then we constructed these, you know, attributes with the wants and the needs, and that's reflected in the like in the art. So how they look, how they're animated in the game, and also the dialogue, kind of what they say to the player. Now, the most popular person in the Suburbia community is Ned Sanders. He's, you know, the lovable loser, yeah, and a little bit of a freak because everything he does revolves around tulips, yeah. So he breeds these tulips in his house or in his garden. He does tulip whiskey, yeah, which is not something that exists, you know. So we did a voting on Facebook. Our community manager did that, and he like the community loved him the most. And our community is basically 70 or 80% women. Yeah. Now, the last thing that's important for us to build what we call this episode machine, and there's 3 aspects to this. The first is the episodic story lab. So we're trying to build a blueprint for how does a game series look like? Yeah? So this blueprint for our game designers and story writers. How does, you know, what are the ingredients here? We have a season plan and the character archetypes, which they have to look at that every day, basically. The second thing is we invest quite a bit into tools to be able to push out content weekly. Yeah, like I said in the very beginning, that's one of the goals that we have in the game, that there's a new episode every week. So we're not there yet quite, but kind of we're getting there. It's getting a lot better. And those 2 things really work on the game mechanics. Yeah, that's also the key thing. So we still want it to feel like a good quality game with an interesting loop and an interesting grind that people go through. Yep, that's about that. Now, the bigger picture, and with that, I'm going to end the talk here. All right. With that, I'm going to end the talk. Is when you look at the media industry, like at large, there's a good exchange between books, film, and TV. Yeah. So you look, and many books have inspired very interesting films. You know, examples would be Harry Potter, The Godfather, or Lord of Rings, for example. Yeah. Film and TV has had good exchange. Yeah. So there has been films. No, the other way first. So TV has inspired tons of films, tons of very successful films, like Avengers, Charlie's Angels, and Miami Vice. Yeah. recently, kind of the TV and film people are excited about taking film into TV series. Yeah, so From Dusk Till Dawn is something that's pretty recent. Hannibal and Fargo are other examples. Now, the games industry has been pretty much left out in all of this. Yeah, but certainly, you know, when you look at media at large, games is this billion-dollar industry, or billions of dollars industry right now. And why should it not be a more part of this, IP exchange? Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of what we wanted. What we want to do with Suburbia. We hope we told you a little bit about how we think about it, and where we're going to go with it, and that's about it.
There is a lot of time for Q&A.
For your game, Suburbia, how many creatives, when I say creatives, I mean the game designers and writers, do you have working on that game to come up with your plots and mechanics and stuff?
All right.
And the kind of the follow-up question is, because you have so many plots and storylines and apparently multiple people working on the storylines, what do you do when they don't disagree, or how do you pick the storyline that actually comes through?
Okay. All right. So we work in pretty small teams. Yeah. So we are part of this generation of game companies where it's not huge. Like overall in the company, we're like 45 people, and on Suburbia we would have like a dozen people working on it. Yeah. And that's a mix between, like you say, game designers, story writer, and the game designer and story writer, kind of they work together on that part to like resolve, whatever the story is. And if there's a question, he's the CEO, so he can have a say too. Yeah, and that's that.
So how many you said there's about a dozen people working on the game.
Yeah.
But how many game designers are there?
It's like one game designer.
Oh, one game designer, and how
Yeah.
many writers?
One.
Okay, there you go.
Anyone else?
How do you manage shifting between multiple plot threads, and how do you strategize merging those or destroying or creating new ones? When do you know it's time to sort of jump and shift the audience's attention?
I mean, as Mark said, so we're very analytical, and we really track a lot of the stuff that's happening in the game, and we really look at how many people are at a certain level in the game, what episode are they playing, how long do they engage with that one, how quickly do they move to the next one, and then we just try to tweak it back and forth to make sure that it's really fitting the biggest amount of audience that we can get for that plot line.
Thanks for a great talk. I really like your diagram here. I'm just curious on your thoughts of whether there should be an arrow going back from games to TV, and if so, might there be other modes of gameplay that could also translate well to TV besides like the cinematic approach?
I would like to hope so. Yeah. Right now, this is not something that we can do or something that we thought about a lot. And frankly speaking, yeah. Right now, because the more well-known IP sits in the TV and film world, I think that's the first step that we're going to see. Yeah. Probably, the best-known IP in games, these would be like GTA, for example. So, one day will there be a GTA movie? Maybe, right? Yeah, for that. But that's a different target group than for us. For example, we mostly cater to women. Yeah, but a GTA movie would be something awesome, right?
I mean, for example, if you do a Angry Birds movie, I think there's something like that. So I think that's also where it goes in the other direction. Yeah.
Sure. There's an Angry Birds theme park in Malaysia.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So you would have to figure that out. I mean, TV. I mean, these they call them these serialized story arcs. That's like difficult to construct. That's why from film to TV, that's like the newer thing. Yeah. And because the people know the film, and that's like burned into everybody's heads, right? So that's that character, that's the setting, and so on. And if you watch, for example, Hannibal, that's like like the actors are different than the movie, and like a ton is different. Yeah. So the audience has to believe that jump. Yeah. So I think when you take it from games into TV series, now how's it going to look? But it's going to be probably a big jump for the audience too. Yeah.
Hi. How do you? Is the story told on rails? Like literally, you're taking them through the story, or do they have choices of which story and plot line they want to go down? So it's a question. The follow-up would be, if it is the latter, how do you deal with the free will aspect of it?
So we have both. So we have, so to say, the main plot line, which is, to say, very linear. So because it has to be, because there are certain elements. So you discover the dead body, and then you have to, so to say, the murder weapon. You find it, and you have to, so to say, been screened from CSI. So that is, so to say, overriding part. And no matter when people start the game, whether today or in 6 months, they will go through that and hopefully enjoy it. What we then have in parallel are certain quests or storylines that might be related to, so to say, things that are happening in the world. So like the World Cup, yeah, so you could embed that, and then everybody in the game, no matter where they are in the storyline, you would have, so to say, a second storyline that could be around the World Cup, or if so to say, there's a new TV series that wants to be promoted, you could, so to say, then have some of those characters move into Libertine Heights, and then everybody will, so to say, engage with those characters for 2 weeks, and then they would leave again or something. So we actually have both things incorporated into the game.
So each arc is basically a linear story, but then you've got choice between which arc to kind of either pursue or not pursue or go down.
Yeah.
And then I guess there's some predicates and whatnot. Okay.
And we actually think that this is really important, that, so to say, there is, so to say, some part of the storyline that is not tied to, for example, what has been played on TV right now. Because if people then are not in the game yet and it's played on TV now, then those people will be lost when they start the game in 4 weeks. So that's why we made it, so to say, that it can be played at any time going forward, but we can still take advantage of stuff that is current.
Okay. One other question, if I can still take the mic. You mentioned you're not quite at the weekly episodic content. How far is that away from reality? Are you guys like 2 weeks per episode, 3 weeks per episode, 6 months from episode?
So yeah, right now we're like at 3 weeks per episode.
Okay.
Anyone else? Oh, wait, we need like, that's fine. I'm coming. That's fine.
How crucial do you believe the move to mobile will be in order to stay in business? Like, do you believe games like Suburbia will very soon be not that popular on Facebook, and it'll be all mobile, or do you believe you can last long by staying on Facebook?
I mean, so Facebook is still very a big part of our business, and we think that especially for something that is rather innovative, it's actually still good to start there, because the iteration cycles are super fast and they're a little bit longer on mobile. But we do think, obviously, that, so to say, once we, so to say, nail that down, so to say, the core gameplay and bringing out episodes once a week, then we will bring that to mobile, especially to tablet, because we think that, so to say, this kind of content, I mean, the demographics are the same as those who are watching TV in the afternoon or in the evening on their sofa and really want to have, so to say, a session time that's like 20 or 30 minutes. So that's where we want to be. I'm not sure it will be, so to say, so ideal on a mobile phone, but definitely on a tablet. I think this will really be awesome there too.
You and then.
Are you okay? Are you Unity on Facebook?
There we are actually in Flash.
Okay.
But we have, so to say, for our other games that I showed earlier, for the Solitaire and Mahjong, they are also on Flash in Facebook, and we're bringing them to the iOS and Android world with, so to say, mobile Flash, so Starling. So we are also there using exactly the same code to get exactly those advantages, that we have the same game on both platforms and we don't have to rewrite it from scratch. We just, instead of going with Unity, we went with mobile Flash on this one.
Yeah, sorry if you already covered this. I walked in a few minutes late, but I'm curious how you guys think about the consumer need this fills, and whether you find that to be different than gaming or TV more traditionally.
All right. the way how we approach this, like really from thinking about the audience. Yeah. So you know, the audience here is like female. Yeah, 70-80% of the players are female, and they're between 20 and 45. Yeah, that's the largest group, and most of them in America, in the States here. Yeah. So that's what we think about. And you know, what do? They do watch TV. Yeah. So they're interested in stories, like a lot, because they watch hours and hours. But they also play games. Yeah. And they started out with pretty simplistic games a few years ago, but now they're interested in games with a bit more depth. Yeah. So that's how we think about the need here.